We're joined now by former federal prosecutor John Flannery and Melissa Murray, a professor of law at NYU. Professor, having laid out the reported history, your view of this?
Well, that was quite an issue spotter that you laid out. But again, it seems like what you've laid out is actually what's going on. Something is definitely rotten in the state of Denmark. If this had been a legitimate removal for cause, it would be obvious that the Attorney General would say what those causes were, whether they were professional misconduct or incompetence. But there was no suggestion of that. And in fact, it seemed like Attorney General Barr was willing to slot Jeff Berman into some other high-ranking position in the DOJ. So it can't be that he wasn't doing his job well. It might have been that he was doing his job too well.
And Professor, build on that point. You added something that we only briefly touched on, which was in the original plan, which Berman says was false, that Barr's announcement was false. He was offered a type of promotion or come back to Main Justice. So you're saying, being the expert litigator and legal expert you are, that Barr cannot simultaneously claim this person was good enough to be promoted to a bigger job in D.C., but bad enough that he had to go immediately.
Well, it beggars belief to suggest that you would slot this person into a really important post in Main Justice, the head of the civil division, while he was unable to execute his role as U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. And further, the fact that the administration seemed willing to put in another person who's now the head of the SEC with no prosecutorial experience, but with a lot of experience playing golf with the president, suggests that the real issue here was that they didn't have the right man in the right job at the right time.
John?
Well, you know, I think it'd be surprising to me that any U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York would want to head the civil division afterward. But I think the context tells us a lot. You and I sat, I think, on a Sunday when Barr had written a summary of the Mueller report, which misled the nation as to what the findings were. And from that moment forward, we have the amoral Trump and his corrupt mouthpiece Barr working against the investigation of his president, both in terms of victimizing those who did the investigation, trying to transfer prosecutors in the case. And the most recent examples, of course, are Stone. And after that, of course, Flynn. And now we have this instance in an office where they're investigating Cohen, his lawyer, Rudy, his lawyer, the inaugural committee. We have the bank, the Deutsche Bank in that district, which was his prime lender, that is Trump's. And we have his statement, courtesy of Bolton, that he spoke to Erdogan, and Erdogan, he assured, don't worry about those people in the Southern District, I'll take care of them. So we have a whole cornucopia of possibilities for obstruction, which is, I believe, what this is. And, you know, a lot of people have said, well, the president can fire whomever he wants. Well, on a certain level. But there's an old legal principle that goes back to England, which is that a judge cannot judge in a matter in which he has an interest. So you have a president who is basically choosing who his prosecutor is, and he wants to choose a guy who couldn't handle a misdemeanor case in the Southern District of New York, and who's just interested in holding the position.
Well,
I think
John,
we can see right through it.
You're pinpointing, John, some of those key cases and the efforts to kneecap the independent system that we have, and that is really the foundation of the rule of law in the United States. I should say on a lighter note, John, I know you keep a busy home office. I'm surprised that people calling you don't watch you when you do a legal appearance on television, but that's between you and them.
Yeah, well, I think some of them do.
Some of them do, but some of them are calling. And, you know, the phones, everybody wants your legal opinion, us as well. For both of you, before I bring in one more special guest, because this is such a big story, though, for both of you, John, and then Professor, why is it important for folks who don't follow this in and out that the literal federal law requires the independent prosecutors stay in this pipeline of cases, that the president does have the technical authority to remove people. But unlike, say, White House staff, John, Berman was fighting tooth and nail. He obviously, it's not his style to go clash with his boss and call him effectively a liar to make sure that the independent prosecutors stayed in, John.
Well, an independent prosecutor means that you just don't interfere. It's not that complicated. But Trump, either out of desperation or because of some specific reason that we don't know, he wants to look at this. And as we're talking this Wednesday, the Judiciary Committee has two whistleblowers who are going to talk about how political it was to interfere in the Stone case by the Justice Department, how political it was in the antitrust section. And I think they're hoping to have Berman. And I don't know how candid he'll be. And I don't say this as a criticism, but sometimes we feel that we have a professional responsibility to, I don't know, advance the comedy of the moment. I think in this case, speaking specifics is really necessary because we have a problem in this country because as important as Berman and the Southern District is, my home district originally, this is a pattern across America. Laws, judges, the Congress, usurping all of these things. Only a despot takes these positions, and we've seen it in other nations. And it doesn't surprise us that Erdogan is his best friend, a strong man from Turkey, and that he would help him because there's a Turkish bank in that southern district. And that's where maybe
I want to jump in. I'm jumping in. I want to bring in the other guests, but it goes to the substantive part of Bolton. There's the book part of Bolton, but then there's what are the underlying facts. And as both of you know, you often have complex witnesses. The question isn't whether you love them and want to go to their book event, but whether they're adding value. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.